will happen to America if Kamala Harris becomes president? The answer to that question is revealed in our explosive 88-page special report, and you can get it absolutely free from one of America's most truthful news sources, WorldNetDaily. Dozens of trusted experts come together to paint a shocking but accurate picture of what will become of the greatest nation on earth if Kamala Harris becomes president. Just call 8337-KAMALA or go to KamalaFreeReport.com and download your copy of Kamala's America immediately. That's KamalaFreeReport.com.
WorldNetDaily is live. Welcome, everybody. Hello. It is October 21st, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards. Welcome to the program. We have a very special guest with us today. We got to get into this election chaos along with these military moves that are happening. And it's something that WND Live is definitely tracking. Therefore, we have Mike Shelby. He's a former Intelligence NCO, non-commissioned officer, joining with us out there from Texas. Of course, Josh Turnbow, as always. Gentlemen, we're going to get into this updated DOD directive. There's a documentary that came out that kind of signaled where the left is headed. This is called War Game. We'll take a look at that. And then, in case you're hungry, MAGA-Donalds is back on the map across the country with Donald Trump working a shift over at Mickey D's. So anyway, Mike, welcome to the program. I want to kind of throw it to you a little bit to educate our viewers here a little bit on your background and where you come from. And welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Mike Shelby. I was a former intelligence analyst, NCO, got out as a sergeant, and then was a contractor for a few years. I spent part of every year from 2006 to 2011 deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. And then in about 2014, I started a company that did private intelligence. So essentially the same type of work I was doing just for Americans who need to know this stuff.
And when you talk about the gray area between war and peace, what is that? What is that exactly? Because I think sometimes I feel like I'm in that world right now, right?
Absolutely, we are. Yeah, that started back in 2008, probably with Occupy Wall Street, and then really with the fundamental transformation, the class-based war that Obama brought. And so when we talk about the gray area between war and peace, we're really talking about something called low-intensity conflict. And that exists beneath the threshold of conventional war. So we're not talking about tanks and bombers, but it exists above routine peaceful competition. And so we are, I always say the United States, we're not really at war with each other yet, but we're definitely not at peace either. And that's where we are. So low-intensity conflict is an umbrella term that applies to things, everything from violent social movements to terrorism, to popular revolutions, to insurgencies. So all the things that are not quite conventional war. And that's where we've been. I think that's probably where we'll stay.
So, okay, so you're not somebody that necessarily thinks that full-on kinetic warfare on the streets of America and rural towns to the urban areas is in our future, or would you never rule that out?
I think organized political violence is likely, and by organized political violence, I'm talking about armed conflict. I do expect that to happen, but it's going to be very sporadic. I think it's going to be very limited. It's not going to be like 1861. It's not going to be like Russia, Ukraine. This, when we talk about civil war, a lot of people start thinking along those terms. I'm looking more like Irish Troubles, the Argentina Dirty Civil War, just periods of irregular warfare, low intensity conflict. I think we are in for that.
Josh,
I can't wait. I can't wait to jump in.
I know, I was going to say, but you're in the game. You understand like propaganda and how messaging and films and the images that get thrown out at people, like what's your take on what Mike says about, the gray area, this gray zone and the propaganda, the media war?
Yeah, like I defer to Mike on these things. He is the expert. But one thing that I can't quite get away from is the idea that we may have come to this end of the fourth turning. There's all these doomer things that I really enjoy thinking about. I don't want them to be a reality. That would be horrible. And I think the thing that broke me from thinking that way, and Mike, I'm not going to speak for you, but you're very responsible in your answers. And I guess I don't have to be because I'm not an expert in anything. is maybe like Trump being shot was kind of what made me change my mind in the idea that the political violence could be a reality for us very soon. I hope that's wrong. But also the left, they just can't help themselves. And like here, I'm just going to help with the segue here. This trailer we have, of course, the left has to make a documentary. They love to make documentaries. I'm a documentary filmmaker myself, and we know how powerful narrative, can be. And here they go. They make a movie called War Game. And what is that war gaming out? What could potentially happen if the election goes awry, and then what the other sides do? They always want to do this ahead of time. Some people call it, psychological projection. But then we're going to show that, and then we want Mike, of course, to weigh in and tell us what he thinks about this film.
My fellow Americans, it is undeniable that this past election was stolen. To all those members of the armed forces, join with us to defend our liberty and land.
Seated around this room is an incredible diversity of professional experience spanning the last 5 presidential administrations. Most of you have sworn under oath to defend the Constitution. What happens when those in uniform break that oath?
January 6th demonstrated a possible false sense of security.
The next insurrection could involve members of the active duty military turning their weapons around on the folks that they're there to protect. One of the recommendations was to war game what that might look like.
I am President Hotham, Chief Executive of the United States of America.
You have 6 hours to avert a civil war and ensure the peaceful transfer of power.
Mr. President, we are going to be starting the game in 3.
We are here to stress test our national security system.
1.
I want them to be prepared for the worst case scenarios.
I have no idea if at the end of this exercise, this country collapses or comes together.
Where would we like to send a large body of armed crazies?
Capitol.
You are confirming that there are National Guard that have in fact let protesters through.
I'm going to flood the zone with fake pictures, guys.
Very difficult to find out what is real and what is.
And there were actual images of them?
It is not compromising the proceedings of the election.
Yeah, it is compromising the proceedings of the election. The entire Congress is still in a bunker.
Now they're playing the game.
Everybody back to the table.
You can authorize lethal force.
Pause for just a second. Is that correct? You could have federal?
We've done it on the southwest border.
He's going to have to make a decision.
Put your f***ing cards on the table.
The United States could be on the brink of a second civil war.
You've pissed off a lot of senior-ranking folks from all 5 presidential administrations.
It was my job.
Great job.
Yeah.
Matt, they could have just called the movie Leftist Wet Dream. I think it would have been just fine,
It's like it literally is a game. It's a game.
They think it's a game.
They
yeah.
love it. They love it. Mike, come on.
Yeah, Mike, get in on this.
What did we just see? What is this? Go.
I think this is a classic example of groupthink. I don't know who all was involved in the war game, but they say senior officials from 5 administrations. So these are like policy wonk, inside the beltway, never had a real job in their lives type of people, always working for some presidential administration. State Department idiots, national security wonks. They don't get it. They don't understand the ground truth. I mean, this is like trying to get a 4-star general to understand what life is like really on the ground for like PFCs. And they're so far removed, and they've really never experiencnced what it's like. I think you're right on with calling this a wet dream. It's groupthink, and they just don't get it.
It's funny too, because this trailer, they can't help themselves, from the makers of The Handmaid's Tale, which is
their other fantasy.
Yeah. All of the signs are there that this is pure. This is just the world that they want to create. I think I saw Bill Kristol in there.
Yeah. Bill.
I mean, who is this? I don't know who this is made for. You have a tweet that you put out, or a post on X. I'm trying to get away from the tweet stuff. I never liked that. Anyway, this is what you threw up there. And a funny thing happened on the way to the Capitol. And you I don't know where I want you to explain to me where we get this timeline here, but this is the time. Explain this. What is this timeline? Let's leave this up here and let you walk through it. What is this timeline we're looking at?
Yeah, sure. So this was put out by Politico, I think over the weekend. We read all these in kind of inside the Beltway Politico type news articles, and yeah, they're trying to. It's like they're trying to make people foam at the mouth over this, but this thing from Politico, they said, no, okay, November 5th to December 11th, Trump and Trump surrogates are sowing doubt. And then Republican-led legislatures decide to appoint alternate electors and send those to Congress because maybe they don't agree with the outcome of the election. And then the electors meet, and then eventually this goes down to Congress endorsing Donald Trump's electors instead of Kamala Harris's electors. And then the January 6th, the final move to seize power at the joint session of Congress.
Yeah,
they kind of laid out this timeline. I mean, it's not impossible. I just look at this and I say, well, this is just one potential course of action in a huge range. And frankly, if this election is stolen, I really don't think it would be by the party that's out of power.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Like, how does the party outside of power rig the election, right? I mean,
well, I guess,
yeah,
I guess the case could be made that say, well, okay, the Republicans have a slim majority in the House, and so if it did come down to a vote, the GOP could potentially do this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the better question is how does the party that's not in power make sure that there's a safe election? That's really my biggest thing. I mean, you keep hearing, Trump and all of his acolytes talk about how, you got to get out there and vote. That's the only thing that's left to do is to just show up in force, make it too big to rig. And I think, and I keep thinking to myself, like, well, what has changed since 2020 or 2022? And especially when you have this drumbeat from the left that Kamala's gonna win, and this is how Trump is gonna take office. When all of the indicators in the real world, the folks that are actually paying attention, point to the exact opposite. When you've got bullets whizzing by the president's head, when you've got an inept and completely out to lunch current president, we have no idea who is running the government. And there's always the option that Kamala, the failing in the polls, Kamala loses the election, but then can 25th Amendment the Biden and become president. I mean, all of those scenarios I don't see ever making the front pages of Politico or the New York Times. Am I crazy in even suggesting any of that stuff, Mike?
No, I don't think so. And the other thing that Politico is not pointing out here is some person way smarter than me pointed this out some time ago. Our elections really aren't elections over votes; they're elections over ballots. And so, there's all these Democrats and they say they want to have these free and fair elections, and they are free and fair, and they're fortified, and no one can hack into them, and no one can change anything. And that's kind of been the party line. And then us on the other side, we say, well, we actually don't think they're free and fair because in some of these precincts, there are more registered voters than the people who actually live there. There's more ballots that were counted in this precinct than registered voters. Like how does that stuff happen? And so, they're just like really key details, I think, that justify some skepticism about the freest and fairest election in the history of the country and the securest election in the history of the country. And, the problem is they don't provide us any information. They want to block transparency. And I hate to even be partisan here. I'm just saying this is justifiable concern here. And the fact that they do not acknowledge or address that is concerning.
Yeah. Josh, we want to watch this clip with Tim Pool and his guest on here. Can you set up who this guest is, unless you had something else you wanted to cover first?
Oh yeah, just one thing I wanted to ask Mike. So Mike, can you help me understand, you do acknowledge that there's some concerns, but I think your general outlook is that not much will happen. Is that correct? Or could you please tell us what it is?
Well, something's going to happen. I think the focus on having a 2020 part 2 is I think that's a misplaced focus. In the Army, we said we criticize the Army. It's always preparing to fight the last war. And I think we're falling victim to a little bit of that by saying, I see people on social media all the time. They say, oh, if Trump wins, it's going to be 2020 on steroids. It's going to be worse than 2020. We're going to have pink suicide bombers at Chick-fil-A bad. And, I don't see that. Like I track the far left for a living. And they're not actively preparing. They're really not exhibiting any of the indicators that they did, even going back to 2015 and 2016, it's just not there. And so maybe there's a few reasons why that is, and that could change. Maybe the day after the election, they turn that dial up and they start doing all the things that they need to do. These are pre-operational indicators, things that you would see or would expect to see, and I'm just not seeing that. So I'm not saying that there will be nothing after the election. There will obviously be something if Trump does in November, and in a free and fair election. I think Trump will win in a free and fair election. You never can tell what's going to happen at the counting part of the election. So yeah, there's a chance that switch gets flipped and they do this kind of reversal and they get back out. I think we'll see mass protests. I think there's going to be a lot of consternation, probably some political violence, maybe some people. I don't know. It's really tough to say, but as of right now, and maybe this could change on November 6th or December 20th or January 20th. So it could change, but right now I'm just not seeing any of those pre-operational indicators like we saw in early 2020 that would lead me to believe like, yeah, this is it. We're having another 2020 again. I don't currently expect that right now.
When you say that, are you basing that under what you've also seen in other countries when it comes to these color revolutions type things? Are those the indicators that you're suggesting?
I started tracking the far left back in 2016 because I saw these people assaulting Trump supporters, and I just said, back then I was not a Trump guy, but I just said, even then that's not right. And I started thinking, I was like, actually, I've spent almost 3.5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan tracking insurgents and the insurgency, and I said, really what we're talking about here is not too different. I mean, this is tribal warfare. This is a proto-insurgency. Even back in kind of 2016 and in the 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And so I said, let me just start tracking these groups like I would the Taliban or Jaish al-Mahdi or whatever other groups in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so what I've done is I've compiled a list of indicators, things that we saw in the lead up to certain events on the left. And so when I talk about pre-operational indicators, I'm talking about what these groups and individuals are doing to agitate, what they're doing to recruit. Are they holding open recruiting events and info sessions? Are they trying to community organize and get the political left organized? Are they holding training? Are they holding like street medic training? Are they holding direct action training? Are they training all the essentially the militant class of the far left? Are they training these people to go out and throw Molotov cocktails at police? Are they training them to go, bash windows or go participate in these black bloc riots? And the answer is no. I'm not seeing any of that. So either this stuff is being magically done underneath the surface of what's visible, or it's not happening. And I think just right now it's not happening.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I think back to even the late 60s, early 70s with the Weather Underground and the domestic terrorists there that I mean, they were bombing things all over. I just posted something on X the other day about how much chaos that the Weather Underground and the SDS movement back then caused in our country, from bombing the U.S. Capitol to the Pentagon, banks, judges' homes. I mean, all of that, and where it led our country. So that's fascinating. That, I mean, it's smart to take your analysis of what you did when you were deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq and the insurgency that was going on there, and to use that sort of analysis to compare what you see now in this lead up to 2024. I mean, I got to say, I don't, and I don't know about you, Josh, but I don't really see Antifa on. I mean, Antifa used to be posting things and being really, really loud and outlandish, and you really don't see that. And the same thing with the like you mentioned Occupy Wall Street earlier as well. Like those types of folks, I don't see them out there right now. And if you're the one doing the more of the deep dive analysis on that, Josh, do you have a similar take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike, I have a project that's it's been tracking Antifa for quite a while, actually, and been filming a lot of that as a documentary for one of our directors that we are partnered with. But it's true, it's kind of like fallen off. One thing that I think this is just a take we had, is that the law did come back around and punish those people when it could. the people that were blatant and in the places that they wanted to pursue them, it did. And so Antifa people did go to jail. So we may have moved into the next phase where the only way that is allowed is if it's legally allowed. And that kind of like would kick to our clip here that we have from Tim Pool's IRL podcast, which we want to share that. And of course, credit to Tim Pool and his show. But he had on a guest, Rudyard Lynch, who has a show on YouTube called What Alt Hist. And in it, he does the real brainy essays on what's going to happen to our culture. And he makes gigantic claims that only will be bared out in history, really, as if they're right or wrong. But we have this clip. We want to watch it and then get Mike's take.
Following the election, you have already said you think there will be 1,000 deaths, politically motivated deaths by April.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And either this will be the effect of or the beginning of what may be a collapse or breakdown?
I think it'll be a war. I think you'll still probably get your groceries. You'll still be able to watch Netflix. Keep in mind, in Syria or Ukraine, the horrible thing is you'll still have to go to your job. You'll still have to pay your bills. You'll still watch Netflix with the kids. It's just Chicago's being shelled. And the top predictors for these crises from the inflation analysis are increase in real estate prices, real estate and food prices, oil prices. And this was stuff I saw in 2020. And I was thinking in 2020, oh, it's great that our real estate's not that bad. It's great that our food prices aren't that bad. And then
now food and I got to tell you, real estate is insane right now.
I know. For my whole stack of probabilities, my top probability now is election dispute. Then it's budget issue. Then it's foreign war, Trump assassination. I'd move Trump assassination to number 3 now, and then black swan or randomized event. With these wars, you reach a threshold where people want to kill each other, and they're looking for plausible deniability.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be done in a certain way so that both sides have complete legal plausible deniability to kill the other. The reason I say that we're going to have a civil war now is that neither side can afford to not have a civil war, and I'd explain that later. But the right and the left both want a war at this point, and I know that's true because both sides have completely given up on plausible deniability for the other side. They're just pandering to their own people.
Wow, that's a pretty dark take there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not calling
he's going
for
big.
civil war, but
so Mike, he talks about the kind of like what we just mentioned. There's no legal plausibility right now for Antifa, right? So they're keeping their head down. I mean, I don't think there is. And then Rudyard talks about legal plausibility in the scenario of side versus side. What's your take on that?
Mm-hmm. Legal plausibility, we did see in 2020 just a revolving door of people being arrested, booked, not charges dropped, and then released. And then a night or two later, they would get arrested, booked again, and then released. If that were to come back, then yes, I don't think there would be a revolving door for capital crimes like murder, but for everything below that potentially. Honestly, I think even in the cities, people are pretty tired of that. I don't think the country psychologically wants another 2020 again. I don't think the average 2020 happened for a few reasons. It was really allowed to happen, but we had 4+ years of a pressure cooker of scenario that. In 2020, there was a trigger, and then the George Floyd thing was just plastered all over, and that was the big release valve, right? I mean, that was the pressure cooker exploding, and so I do not see, really when we're talking about civil wars or low-intensity conflict, we're really looking at 3 things. We're looking at fault lines, accelerators, and triggers. I don't really view the Trump election as the trigger that's going to set off. We've had 4 years of, some popular immiseration with inflation and affordability and the cost of living crisis. But what accelerators of conflict have we had over the past 4 years? I think the only trigger would be if the election, I don't think it's who wins. I think it's how they win. And if there is 30, 40, 50% of the country that, again, for the 3rd election in a row, looks at this election as being stolen on either side, I think that could be a trigger. But, it's like blowing up a balloon. how much steam is going to be let out of this thing with not enough steam really being put into it. And by the way, that 1,000 deaths thing by April, I mean, that's easily falsifiable. That 1,000 deaths comes from the United Nations. That's their benchmark to call something an active civil war. And even 1,000 is kind of arbitrary. So is it possible? Yes, it's possible. 1,000 deaths by April. That's a lot of deaths between inauguration and April.
Yeah, that's a ton. I didn't know that. You're saying that he's claiming that, or that matches the United Nations description of civil war?
Well, just a lot of academics choose that because that's kind of the official metric. But okay, 990 or 800, 700, 500. It's kind of an it's. I read that some years ago, and I kind of thought it was silly. I mean, if you have 200 deaths due to armed violence, so really they're looking at four things. Number one, there's fighting on both sides. Number two, the government has to be a belligerent. Number three, 1,000 deaths in a year. And then there was a fourth one. But those are the four prerequisites for the United Nations and other NGOs to call something a civil war. So if the government is a belligerent, we're talking about military involvement. So by those metrics, the U.S. military would have to be involved as a belligerent in this conflict. And
well,
maybe we get there.
Well, Mike, that leads us into this update of this DoD directive. 5240.01. Ron Paul posted about this, and he had a clip. Folks are a little up in arms on this directive here, which seemingly authorizes the use of military reaction on the ground should I guess local law enforcement need it. Can you walk us through what you think that this is saying, and we'll get some reactions on some of these other clips here. But are you familiar with this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did a deep dive last week. Finally, I had so many questions about it, and for good reason. Just looking through this, I think the big problem with this is that people are focusing on the wrong things. And I did see the part where the use of lethal force is authorized in certain circumstances. And let me just say this. I'm not a defense policy analyst. I'm not a legal wonk. I just look at this as an intel guy and say, well, here's what I think. By far the biggest problem in here is not actually that lethal force is authorized, because you kind of read the fine print and it's like, well, there's exigent circumstances. And then really the DOD, the Department of Defense, is just saying the use of lethal force is authorized in certain situations, like in cases of life, limb, or death or something like that. And it's concerning enough, but the thing that I've not seen anybody, and I don't monitor the media, but the things that I've not seen anyone else talk about are the sections dealing with covert and clandestine activities, which have been authorized upon the approval of the President of the United States, so Biden. Can I share with you just one section here?
Yes, please.
I've got it pulled up. This is under section 3.2, which is their section on permissible assistance. And it says, in accordance with executive order, so on in federal laws. It says defense intelligence personnel. So these are military units engage either have intelligence funding or they're flat out intelligence units. It says here, they're allowed to participate in law enforcement activities to investigate or prevent clandestine intelligence activities by foreign powers or their agents, international terrorist activities, and international narcotics activities. This particular directive is an update from 2007. That language did not appear in 2007. That language is new. And so that's the first thing I looked at. And the second thing also just says defense intelligence components will be authorized if approved by President Biden. Defense intelligence components can also take part in covert activities inside the United States in a role in support of law enforcement. So this to me says something completely different than what everyone else is focused on. And this really does look like defense intelligence involvement in support of law enforcement, maybe going after foreign actors. And it says, or their agents. So if law enforcement at whatever level were to say, well, we think there's some nexus between MAGA Joe and the Russians, then conceivably, at least according to this document, conceivably, MAGA Joe could become a target of domestic defense intelligence collection under certain federal laws and stuff. I think that's far more concerning than saying if a defense intelligence person gets caught in a case where he may lose his life, he can use lethal force.
Yeah, and Mike, there seems to be another policy update that talked about giving special emphasis will be given to the protection of constitutional rights and the privacy of U.S. persons. And I would think that all of those things would fall underneath that. But I mean, one could look at the Patriot Act and say, well, how does that fall under the Constitution as well? And is that kind of like what you're saying here? Like they may use nice words in this thing to say that they're going to protect the privacy and uphold the Constitution, but then there's all this other stuff that they could just do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have two concerns. You know, they say that about protecting the personal information and U.S. persons, protecting the privacy and rights of U.S. persons. There's a bunch of stuff that got scooped up under bulk surveillance, bulk collection, that was clearly a violation of civil rights. It was a big thing after Snowden leaked it. That's number one. Number two, I think it would be not very difficult to bury some of this collection in a special access program that's hidden, something that maybe the president wouldn't even know about. I mean, this would be an egregious violation of federal law, but I think we've probably seen stuff like this before. And you go back to like the Church and Pike committees and looking at all this stuff the CIA was doing back then, really lawless. And then the third thing has to do with the FISA warrants. So we have these secret judges, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that basically just says, if there is an American citizen, a U.S. citizen, U.S. person, who is involved or potentially involved in some nexus of a foreign agent, then they could be surveilled. And a secret judge passes off on that. I mean, we saw this whole thing with Trump, how easy that is to do with this circular reporting. So just because a piece of paper says, we're going to uphold the law, trust us, guys. And one more thing, too. This latest document also talks about Title 50. And Title 50 is a part of the U.S. code that deals with national defense and war. It also governs covert and clandestine activities, what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I've had people tell me, these lawyers that say, oh, I've done this for 30 years and the Defense Department can't churn this out in a matter of days. This thing's got to take years. Well, here we have this thing was published 38 days before the election, and it is included, new language is included about covert and clandestine activities being authorized if allowed by President Biden here in the U.S. homeland. So I think that's deeply troubling.
And so you are worried about it then, Mike?
I am.
Mike, is that fair to say you are concerned about this document?
I had a conversation with a guy that he's currently in. He is currently in a unit that engages in covert and clandestine activities. Mm-hmm. And he just said, oh, I'm not really that concerned about it because of this and that. I just thought with the history of the military industrial complex, the history of intelligence gathering against U.S. citizens, why in the world would you just be okay with it? I find it troubling. This is not something under these politically contentious conditions. I don't see why anyone should be so nonchalant about it.
Okay. See, now I can get worried officially, even though you're being very balanced about it, Mike. But I think I'm hearing it.
Yeah, well, Josh, I mean, like you said, we like he pointed out, most people are looking at the sort of like, the ability for the military to fire upon American citizens, but there's something even more within this document that speaks to what the deep state loves to do, and that's gather information, control the narrative, control. I feel like it's way more like cerebral and intellectual to kind of like get into that and war game out what this document can do, other than the surface thing. Can we show this Ron Paul clip? Because I mean, Ron Paul has a take on this that that got people to pay attention to this document. And then I want to thank you for pointing out the rest of the harm in this document. So let's reset it real quick here.
U.S. military now is authorized to kill Americans on U.S. soil. That can't be possible. Yeah. This would open up the door for the careless use, and it's more frequent and legal. It'll be legal now, so nobody will have to worry about that. Send in the troops. We need you to shoot a couple of these people. Yeah. They're opposing our policies. They're demonstrating against COVID rules. There's something they'll come up with. So I think it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Now again, that's kind of like the surface level, the flashy thing in the pan that was pointed out there. But Mike, I want to let you continue here. What are the major concerns?
Well, this directive specifically covers defense intelligence components. We're talking about intelligence units being used to assist in what's called defense support to civil authorities, which that could be anywhere from a hurricane to terrorist attacks. My takeaway from this is not carte blanche, and with all due respect to Dr. Ron Paul, this does not look like to me that it is carte blanche permission for defense intelligence components to use lethal force. I looked at this and there were some stipulations that just said defense intelligence personnel may be put into scenarios where lethal force is a potential. That is going to be one of the factors in whether these permissible activities are approved and authorized. And so the thing that I got from it is defense intelligence personnel are authorized to use legal force in the case of, saving a life, or if someone's life is threatened. Very similar to how police kind of have escalation of force with what they're legally permissible to do, with regard to lethal force.
Josh, are you feeling? I always have to check with the doomer clock.
Dude, I want to be wrong as much as I can. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to. I'm like, dude, so what kind of power bank will run my refrigerator and my internet? And I'm like, that sucks. I don't really want to do that. I'm still like, how many days we have left? Like 15 or something like that. Like, it can't get here soon enough, man. Like, I'm so stoked to move on to Thanksgiving and have the election be whatever, but it just feels like how is that possible that it won't be nuts? We're already planning to do multiple days of broadcasting for it, and I'm just gonna put a sleeping bag up on the table right here, and then and then just turn the mic on, because Mike, what do you think, dude? Like, will we the next day have the kind of we stopped counting thing? It just seems so implausible to have normalcy.
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing, and I'm like you, I like to be prepared.
Yeah.
One thing that we encouraged our people to do is prepare for the potential for a catastrophic event or catastrophic attack that coincides with the election through the inauguration. Look at this thing, and I had all these defense attorneys say, "Oh, this couldn't have been turned around in a few days. This had years to go." That's fine, I get it, but this thing was published, it was released, it was put into its official DoD policy now, 38 days before the election back then, and it specifically is talking about safeguarding the election against foreign intelligence. I would say this is a problem of the Biden administration's own making if something like this were to happen due to the lawlessness of the border. And the question is, how many foreign intelligence and special operations personnel are now operating in the United States? They've had the ability to do this. So, yeah, it is concerning. And I think everyone should be prepared, not just for post-election shenanigans, what happens behind closed doors at these counting sites. And we're going to stop counting because there's a water leak and our counters are tired, so we're going to send them home for a few hours and then come back and, there's 100,000 extra votes here for Harris. That does concern me, but this policy is specifically directed at protecting the election, using covert and clandestine activities in support of law enforcement to safeguard the election. I think there's something more serious here.
Well, Mike, we want to encourage our viewers here to keep track of your work and follow you, whether it's on X, whether it's through any of your other channels. So please let us know where should we go? Where should the audience go to follow you and keep up with your work?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. If you want to find me, I'm pretty active on Twitter/X at GrayZoneIntel. That's gray with an A, at GrayZoneIntel. And then you can find most of our work at earlywarningnetwork.com.
Fantastic. All right, Mike. Well, thank you so much for coming on and diving into this directive. I know our audience really appreciate it. As much as we see all that flashy headlines with this particular story, it's great to have someone like you come on and dive into it with us. I hope you come back again soon, and I hope it'll be better circumstances as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Yep. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Thank y'all.
Okay, great. Oh man. Okay, Josh. Well, let's leave on a higher note here. Let's leave on a higher note, because as Robert Kennedy joined the Trump campaign with this "Make America Healthy Again," I felt like it. Maybe Trump kind of felt like, "Hey, man, you're kind of stepping on my branding," because he's all about Big Macs and French fries, right?
Yeah, look, you can be a hippie all you want. Everyone's starting to embrace the idea that like red food coloring is toxic, probably petroleum. Yes. But we're still Americans, all right? So let's not get excited. We still want a Big Mac with a Coke. And Donald Trump is as American as you get. And so he went to go work at McDonald's as a campaign publicity stunt. And I just think it's fantastic.
I do too. Here's the story over at WorldNet. Now that's got to be AI generated, right?
I think that's AI. The red suit with the red tie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That being said, though, we have that story over at WND. Here it is. He's working the deep fryer. He was at the window handing out French fries. He even said, he even wished Kamala a happy birthday yesterday. And so MAGA-Donalds is now how we're going to refer to it now, right?
Yeah, it's great. I think I even went through the drive-thru with my family yesterday just because like it seemed appropriate. And I'm going to tell you, it was friggin' delicious. It really is. Right? You know, you eat that every day and we know what happens, but yeah, it was fantastic. And such a dig too, because, you know, there was this early story about Kamala claiming to have once worked at McDonald's, maybe. And Trump campaign, they're geniuses. They just capitalized on that by him actually going there and working there.
And I think, and I hope this sparks a movement too, because like I said, when you set up the narrative that Make America Healthy Again and McDonald's, there's no reason why McDonald's can't go back to using beef tallow, using tallow to fry their French fries, to use real beef. I mean, there was a time when McDonald's actually delivered just a faster version of the food that you would make at home. And that's how it all started. How we shifted into this world where we were using food dyes and cutting corners and just making Americans sick is awful. So I hope McDonald's is taking note that Trump's showing up, which is good. It got someone like Josh to bring his family through the drive-thru.
It was great.
If we want to keep going, we got to make this stuff healthy, right?
Yeah, I think in the long run, everyone wants to be healthy. Everyone wants to live a full life, and you know, that momentary pleasure of McDonald's maybe once in a while is fine. But in the end, no, we need to start eating better, and we need to get rid of like these post-World War II preservatives that we have in everything, and because they really are making us ill.
Yeah, exactly. And folks, if you got to go over to our Instagram account, because we got some video up there from Trump's time, and some, you know, these people are freaking out. They're like, "Oh, this was a photo op." Well, of course it was.
He did the work, people. He did the work.
He did the work, but like, of course it was set up to be a photo op. You know, they're like, oh, man, that McDonald's was closed for the time that he was there, and they had it all set up to have people drive through. It's like you think the guy's been shot almost twice, right? I mean, you'd think they'd want to secure the building and stuff, but
this is from like the cynical leftist who's like, this is probably a photo op, and by the way, there's no such thing as genders. Like,
right.
Okay, cynical genius.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, so go over to Instagram and check out this video. Do we have the clip of what's playing at Instagram or no?
Coming up, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Kamala's birthday?
She's 60 years old? Yes, I would say happy birthday, Kamala. She's turning 60. I think I'll get her some flowers. Maybe I'll get her some fries. That might be. I'll give her some McDonald's.
I love the apron.
I'm having a lot of fun here, everybody. Oh my God! Oh my
God! That's so great. That's so great. And I've seen video. I've seen video over the years of Trump, getting down and dirty. Like he would do all the jobs at his hotels, and he was on the Apprentice for so many years, and this is the Trump that everybody loved. This is the Trump that even Biden's on board.
Why does Biden get the laser eyes? I mean, Trump should have them, but why does Biden get them?
I don't know. And that's the strangest thing too, how all of a sudden we've just embraced Biden. It's like he's on his way out and everybody's like, oh, we love Biden now. Grandpa Joe, Uncle Joe, right?
Yeah. Goodbye and thoughtful memory and see you later.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I don't know if we're still broadcasting on YouTube or not, or if we're off, but
it's a great point.
Yeah, we should check that once in a while. But that doesn't really matter to us, right, Josh? Because everybody should be going over to Rumble.
Guys, did we not call it? We did call it.
Yep.
We said censorship is coming, and sure enough, YouTube just has us. We have so many strikes now that we can't go live. They suck, but we can go live here on Rumble, which we love. Guys, we are about to hit 1,000 subscribers, and in one way that's awesome. In another way, we really need you to go over there and like and subscribe and comment all day long, because we love that. And just this last episode we had with our friend, you can see an image of our friend Ian Carroll was on there. That was a great show talking about conspiracy theory.
Yeah, we should do that every Friday, Conspiracy Friday.
Oh, I mean, at this point,
throwing that out there.
Yeah, we could. There's so many. And then,
of
course, we mentioned the Instagram. Love you to go over there. There's a lot going on. A lot of great stories, especially following some of the darker political / pop culture things that are taking place. That's the spot to be. And then, of course, Telegram. You're going to see everything you can't see everywhere else will be on Telegram. Probably, are they going to knock down all the social media sites during the election night?
I don't know, but I got to order I got to order my Starlink. I think we're going to have
That's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point.
Get that order in. I don't know if it's going to be fulfilled within the next 2 weeks, but
yeah,
folks, well, thank you again for watching. We want to thank Mike Shelby again. You can follow him at Gray Zone Intel on X.
Yeah.
I'm True Matt Edwards on X. Josh is blowing up on X as well.
Oh yeah. I'm actually, okay, guys, thank you. But I'm actually doing stuff on my X account now, thanks to Ian Carroll. And you can find me at Josh_Turnbow. And thankfully, I have more than 100 followers at this moment, but I am putting up a lot of my documentary film work there, and just generally leaning into my favorite conspiracies. So if you want to see some of that, please go follow me over there.
Yes, fantastic. All right, everybody, it is Monday. We'll be back here on Wednesday and for another round. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. God bless.
Thanks, everybody.